Hey folks, thanks for sticking with us through the afternoon slog. We're almost there. But now we get the fun part. We get some youth voices in the room. They're missing school for this, so yeah. But we really appreciate their time and really the ability for us to be able to hear directly from some kids and their experiences in schools and within the community itself. My name is Austin Good. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Lone Tree, and one of the highlights of my job is I get to help out with our Youth Commission. So the City of Lone Tree Youth Commission is a group of about 9 students that live within Lone Tree, and their main task is to advise the City Council on youth issues. So they've done projects and advising on everything from tobacco policy to mental health to hunger in Douglas County schools. Over the pandemic was actually a project, and actually Laura might let you talk a little bit more about that. But we're really excited to be able to bring 2 of our youth commissioners up to speak about just their experiences and what they're seeing in the community. We've been hearing from a lot of experts today, and I've learned a lot myself, and I'm really excited about that. But I think it's a really good thing sometimes to just kind of do a check with some folks that aren't plugged into the mental health world all the time, and some youth that aren't thinking about this maybe every day, to see what their experiences are and what they're hearing and what resources they think are available to them, and maybe seeing where some of those disconnects are. So with that, I'll let you each introduce yourselves. If you want to just kind of shout out your name and your grade, school you go to, and also why you joined the Lone Tree Youth Commission.
Cool. Hello, my name is Laura Pulido. I am a sophomore at Highlands Ranch High School. In addition to being on the City of Lone Tree Youth Commission, I am a volunteer for Lone Tree Teen Court, an alumnus of the Colorado Student Leaders Institute, and I also run cross country, which is pretty cool. I first joined the Youth Commission because I wanted to give back to the community that welcomed me when I first moved here. It's incredibly important to me to be able to help out in this community that helped me. And the best way for me to do that at my age and at my stance in life is to be working with the Lone Tree Youth Commission and helping the youth in my community. So, pass it over to you, Maddie.
Hi, I'm Madeline Gieser, and I'm an 8th grader at St. Mary's Academy. And in addition to the Youth Commission, I give tours at my school for new students, and I am a swimmer. I joined the Youth Commission to inspire positive change in my town. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. And I also want to give Maddie a shout out. So her first youth commission meeting with the city council was this Tuesday. So she's fresh into the commission, and I think this is a really good way to get started. I think you're setting yourself up for some success here. So we've talked a little bit about the youth commission and the overall goals. Do you want to talk a little bit, Laura? Maybe this is a good chance for you to jump in about just some of the projects the youth commission's done, and maybe even the project that you took on last year.
So the Youth Commission does take on a lot of projects because we want to help give advice towards the community. And so one of the projects that we did about 2 years ago is the It's Not Nothing event, which was a mental health night where the City of Lone Tree invited 4 speakers to come talk to a crowd of 200 plus people about mental health as it relates to youth and just the community in general. We also wrote a ordinance for tobacco and e-cigarette law because we think it's important to protect the youth from e-cigarettes. And last year, we also attempted to address food insecurity around our city by raising money and giving money to schools to pass out for kids who are in need and their families so that they can have food to eat. Yeah.
So you guys have been pretty busy, which we really appreciate your work, and it's definitely, again, you see why it's a highlight of my job to be able to get to work with them. So pivoting a little bit onto the mental health side, can you each maybe it doesn't have to play into mental health specifically, but just thinking about the pandemic, what are some of the impacts that you saw over the past year or so that affected you or maybe affected your classmates?
Well, my school was remote for a good portion of the last 2 years, and that has definitely affected some of my classmates' relationships with each other and their relationships with their families who live far away. And, that's very hard for them. It can feel very detached. And one way to combat this is just making friends and starting anew and just connecting any way they can.
Yeah, so there's definitely like a large feeling of isolation and anxiety about going online and not being able to be in person with our classmates and our peers. I think even for adults, this was a pretty tough time going through the pandemic, where you're not able to see your family, you're not able to see your friends, people who you have relationships with, and that's really tough on your mental health, especially. I think also just for me and like my classmates, there's a lot of anxiety about we're losing a childhood and we're losing our youth to this pandemic, right? Because there's so much stuff that I was really excited about going into high school, and I wasn't able to do that. So it's for sure had a large impact. Yeah.
Oh, thank you both. So thinking about the stigma around mental health, that's something that we talk about often is, making it okay to not be okay or making it okay to talk about things. Can you talk a little bit about what your generation or what you see, you and your classmates, how you all feel about, the stigma about mental health? Do things feel like it's becoming okay to talk about, or does it still feel like it's almost like a shame to be dealing with some sort of issue?
Well, in the past, mental health did bring about negative feelings, but especially with the pandemic, our generation knows what it's like to be stressed, and we know that the best way to get out of that is to be there for each other. So we do talk about it openly, but if there ever was something going on, they know to go see a therapist or seek help in some way or form.
I mean, ultimately, mental health is never going to be treated the same as physical health because it doesn't always have physical symptoms. So people are always going to see it a little bit differently. And I think especially for our generation, though, there's been sort of a more openness to it with like the rise of the internet, where people are able to speak about their emotions online with anonymity. And it provides a lot of the sense that like we're not doing this alone. Like a lot of what you see is like, I'm going through that too. They're going through that too. I can talk about it with them. And I think there's also like a lot of people are more comfortable going to therapy, right? A lot of people are more comfortable going to talk to trusted adults or their friends about what's happening with them so that they don't have to feel in such a way. So.
Oh, thank you both. And actually, I'm sorry to jump around. I noticed I did skip a question. It's okay if there's nothing more to add on this topic, but we talked about the impacts of when you were going through the pandemic. Do you have any other thoughts about maybe some longer term impacts, or maybe now that you're back in person in school, is there anything that you're noticing that's different now that you're with your classmates?
There's one population of students that are disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and that is the very young kindergarteners and first graders who, as soon as they were thrown into a school situation, it was shut down, and now I'm afraid that some kids might be anxious in crowds or how to make friends. And now that they're thrown into that situation a bit later, I feel like the teachers and parents need to figure out some way to combat that and be there for them if they need it.
So I think especially for my classmates and I, it was really difficult going online, and then going on person for a lot of people was even harder, because after being online and being isolated from your friends or your other family, it can be difficult to step out of your shell again and step out to continue making relationships, start talking more to people where you didn't have to do that online. Online, it's in many ways it's harder, but it can be easier because you don't have to show your face and you don't have to maybe show vulnerabilities, which you have to do when you're in person. So that's definitely something that it's going to be a lot difficult. It's going to be a lot more difficult for kids to be coming back into this situation.
Oh, thank you for that. So, switching gears a little bit back to what we were talking about before, there's just, thinking about stigmas around mental health, but also thinking about kind of what your personal actions would be. So maybe put yourself in the shoes of maybe you being the person that needs help, or maybe you have a friend that you find out is going through something that they need assistance with. How would you go about that? Do you have any resources that you'd point them to, or if you don't know what you'd do you know who you might go to for help?
Well, I would try to help my friend if it was less severe matter. But if it was more serious, I would tell them to go talk to a teacher or the guidance counselor. And from there, those people can help them find even more trusted adults. And hopefully, the situation will improve.
It's for sure difficult to be going to have a friend come talk to you about what's happening to them in their lives and about if they're feeling depressed or suicidal or something along that lines. It's something that's really important to me, that I try to talk with them and find out how I can help them or how I can get them help. In many instances, that can be difficult because, I don't know, especially at my school and I guess just it can be very difficult to go to an adult about something that someone else is going through, or even what you yourself are going through. With a lot of adults, they don't take the time to build connections with us, to make us feel safe, to be talking to us about what's happening with us and about why we're feeling like this. So it's something that I feel a lot of schools need to improve with, like, providing these areas where people can go to. And I think even with a lot of resources and a lot of companies that are dedicated to helping us, it's difficult because they don't always provide ways to actually talk to them, or they don't have enough awareness about how we go talk to these people, about how we get our friends help.
Thanks for that. So staying on that resource train, so thinking about what mental health resources or what counselor resources might be available to you or a friend or someone that you care about. Can you let us know, just off the top of your heads, what do you know that your school provides, or have they done anything to get the word out about different resources, or even thinking about the community at large? Maybe it's not something that came from the school, but something you heard somewhere else. Is there any resource or anything that comes to mind?
I will say that my school does a phenomenal job, in my opinion, of spreading the word about mental health. We have a program called Sources of Strength, where there are posters throughout the school of a pie chart that show different categories of trusted adults that you can go to when things get tough. And in addition, they've trained teachers to listen when kids have something they want to talk about. And I know there's a club in my high school that focuses on mental health and how to improve kids' self-esteem and behavior and other things like that.
Yeah, so like she said, Sources of Strength is also something that's being launched at my school currently. So over the summer, they provided training to teachers in order for them to be able to deal with more of the mental health aspect of teaching, because that's always going to be something when it comes to teachers. They have a relationship with these students. In addition, our counselors are always available to us, although that's not always something that students first think of to go to, because they don't always take the time to build relationships with us. And also with Sources of Strength, I believe that they are doing a program where they're trying to create a peer leader program so that, as well as teachers, other students can help or can lead the way in helping with mental health at our school.
No, I think that's interesting program. And until I started working with the Youth Commission, I hadn't heard about Sources of Strength before. So that's something new since I was in school. And I think it's one of the things that, personally, in my work with youth, I hear that as a pretty repeated theme of something that the word's gotten out about and folks are familiar with. And so I think that's a really good, positive thing that both of you were able to point to that, because I know actually the work of a lot of people in this room went into that as well. So I think that's a testament to a lot of the hard work that's happened with all these folks. So thinking about mental health resources and knowing that there might be things available but that maybe you don't know about, or maybe there are missing resources where you've gone out and tried to find something and it wasn't there. Is there anything that comes to your mind that you think that schools or the community or organizations like the Mental Health Initiative could do to get more resources in front of you or make them more easily accessible?
I think that they just need to keep doing what they're doing, and, maybe if that includes behavioral health or mental health at local health care facilities and getting the word out about that, as well as training our law enforcement to handle situations where they might be called in for a psychiatric emergency. I know that police men and women are not trained psychiatrists, but I don't want them to, look at it as a bad thing. I want them to be considered more as helpful people in that circumstance.
Yeah, so surprise, surprise, a lot of teenagers don't like to speak about their feelings.
What?
So I think it's just important for schools to continue building these relationships with students, continue making avenues for students to come get the help that they need. And also I think coming to schools, coming to talk to our schools, making more social media and having events tailored towards students so that students will be more inclined to learn about what resources they're able to access. It's really hard as a teenager to go and talk to parents, especially to teachers, because it can almost feel as though you're disappointing them when you're coming to them with mental health issues. I just think that creating these more programs, creating these relationships, that's what's ultimately going to be the difference in a lot of teenagers and people's lives.
So actually, Laura, if you want to hold on the mic, just to build off of that. So, sure, teens don't like to talk about their feelings, or, that might be a difficult hurdle to get by. Is there any advice that you'd give to maybe how to initiate a difficult conversation, like for an adult or a mentor or a parent or a teacher to be able to break the ice or introduce that conversation to a teen if they see, hey, something might not be right?
Yeah. Actually, this is something that I talk about a lot with my friends, because it's important for us, for a lot of times, since it's difficult for us to reach out, sometimes the adults need to be the ones reaching out to us as much as they possibly can. And I think creating an environment where people feel safe to talk about mental health and not maybe putting people down for their mental health problems that's like number one. That's most important, because if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe, you're absolutely never going to talk to somebody about this. Yeah.
Yeah, Maddie, I don't know if you have anything to add on that front.
Yes. So I think that if parents or other trusted adults want to have a conversation with their children about mental health, I want them to start by saying it's that these things are real and they are difficult and they affect many, many people. But if you ever feel like that, there is always someone to listen to you, to help you, and they will never judge you. And there are several resources to go to no matter what. And that they always have to believe in that and not give up on themselves.
I think it's also easy to feel really silly about the problems that teenagers are facing, because for a lot of adults, this isn't really anything, right? Some of what we're facing. But it's just important for adults not to put down what we're saying, what we're trying to put out, and listening to what our kids are actually saying, right? Because sometimes they'll say stuff and it can sound like a joke, or it can sound really silly. It can sound as though it's something small, but it's not a lot of the time. And just paying attention to what they're saying, paying attention to how they're saying it, that's really important for us so that you can reach out to us or we can feel comfortable reaching out to you.
Great, thank you both. Is there anything else before we turn it over to the hyenas out in the audience? Anything that you came into the panel really wanting to make sure that you got across or wanting to make sure you said? Or did you feel like you got everything you wanted to say out?
I mean, I just wanted to thank you for putting on this event. It can be so difficult to talk about mental health, but I think it's so important to have these initiatives to talk about how to better improve people's lives and how to better improve people's mental health, which is so prevalent in our community today. So thank you.
Yes, as Laura said, raising awareness is the best first step that we can take towards solving an issue. And I really appreciate what all of you have done to contribute to this field and help us get where we are today. Thank you.
No, thank you, both of you, for your time today. We can turn over to the audience. We do have some time if anyone has any questions they'd like to throw out there. I'm not sure if we have a mic. Oh, that'll work.
Do you guys feel like it's harder with the mic or easier without it? Like, can everybody hear okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just let it go because then we can just keep it going.
We'll make it work.
My name's Shylin, but I'm not shy, so I'm sure you probably can hear me. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you to you both for your bravery and your vulnerabilities of showing up today and being willing to share some of your experiences and stories. One of the things that I take away every time I have the opportunity to hear youth like yourself is that none of us should continue to do the important work that we do without the inclusivity of you at the table. We'll never change status quo if we're not youth guided and have youth helping us design a better system. So the fact that you show up to participate on the commission, the fact that you're engaged in your school, the fact that you're being champions to your friends and breaking down the stigma is exactly that type of youth support that we need as encouragement around all of the tables that we sit in to keep developing and creating and working towards a system that's equitable for everybody. And that's different. That's a new approach.
appreciate that passion, and we want to continue to work with you. But we have partners here. I know Douglas County Healthy Youth Coalition, a lot of our members are here, but we also have partners with St. Andrews and the Aspen Effect. How can we better connect directly with you? Because at this point, we tend to leave all the responsibilities on the institutions, and that's not just a Douglas County thing. Here we go. We're going to pile one more thing on our education system. Oh, we're going to pile some more on the police officer. So what can the community do, or organizations like ours, better connect with you on things like sources of strength, like explode sources of strength? This could be used among adults to bring more awareness and these skills. So how can you, what suggestions do you have for us to connect better with your peers?
That is a great question. And right now I do have to admit something. The first time I heard about sources of strength was maybe 2 days ago. It's something that's really cool that my school is implementing, that the district is implementing, but it's not something that any of my peers know about. I even asked my peers about this. I was asking my friends, like, what resources do we have? Like, who do we go to besides maybe our counselors? And how do we learn these skills? So I think it's more important to be talking to youth specifically and to be creating programs that are, not programs, but more like events where youth can come and they can learn about this. Like events that are tailored specifically for youth, to buy these events, to buy these companies to learn about. So, yeah.
I think events like this are a great way to connect with the youth, but you also making an effort to come to their schools or daycares, in an age-appropriate way will always make a difference. And I really liked that idea you had about using sources of strength to help adults, because those concepts of if you need something, say something, is always universal.
Also, getting out there on social media, making maybe ads on YouTube that while we do want to skip, we can't, so we have to learn about it. And I think that's something that will ultimately get the attention of a lot of youth and a lot of kids. So, yeah.
Do you think Chris should start a TikTok?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to seeing your dances on my For You page.
So I'm going to piggyback on that because we want you as youth to have trusted adults that you can communicate with, that you have access to. And like you said, the counselors in the schools, they're overworked and they don't have the capacity to get to know you individually. What type of a program could be put in place, like a trusted adult program, do you think? And what type of accessibility would you like to see with that as adolescents? Did you want to do this texting? Did you want telehealth? How would this look?
Well, as we talked about, Sources of Strength is an example of a very helpful program. But as far as accessibility, one platform I really like is Talk Now Colorado. Forgive me on the name, but it's a platform where you can write anonymous messages to the principal of your school or to local police officers if there's something that's troubling you, and they can work at the root causes of that to try to make it better for you. And a trusted adult program would really benefit from anonymous letters, because kids don't want to be singled out, and using their names can embarrass them or make them feel like they aren't doing anything right by talking. But that is needed, and that is what we are trying to do.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, kids don't like to talk, and having that anonymity makes it so much easier, right? And I also think that in many ways having a trusted adult program is needed, but in a lot of ways that often falls to teachers, and that's a lot for teachers to handle. So maybe providing teachers with somebody who they can bring these kids to instead, because kids, they're close with teachers a lot of times. So if they go talk to their teachers, and their teacher can direct them towards someone that they can trust and that they can, instead of just leaving it on the shoulders of these teachers who are already working incredibly hard.
So you're looking at community members then? Maybe where in the community, we can sponsor teachers to be a trusted adult for them. Is that something that you're thinking?
That could be. It's just not something that I necessarily want to put on the shoulders of a teacher, because I feel like teachers are already deal with so much that that's a lot to handle. So, but that could be something that you look at, or that could be something that could potentially be put in place.
And I agree with you completely on that statement. I have a friend who is a teacher in Douglas County, and when I took my job and started talking all about the things that we do in where I work, that was the first thing she said. She said the teachers are so close with these children, the teachers really don't know where to go to make sure that the kids have the resources that they need. And so maybe arm the teachers with resources of people who can then protect those kids and get them to the right resources, because the counselors are busy doing schedules and college prep and all the other things that the counselors do, and sometimes that other piece of the need for help maybe won't get met immediately, whereas if the teachers have more information directly on someone to contact to say, okay, who do we go to offer this child the support that they need? So I agree with you on that.
Dr. Caroline Cup, I'm a pediatrician and behavioral specialist. I sit with people like yourself all day, and again, I vastly appreciate really Mr. Kunkel and sharing this information. I think what I'm hearing you glean, I always think, how I felt before is needed, is more of us into your school, in your faces. More of the people who understand the face of mental health, what it looks like, because a lot of students don't even have an idea. I didn't take interviews and like, well, I didn't know, like all kids don't do that, no. And parents think like, isn't that normal? All kids are punching holes, teenagers are punching holes in walls. No, that's not normal. And the parents don't understand what the face of mental health looks like. The teachers think they understand. They still miss what you do still. Anxiety, I can't tell you how many IEP meetings I attend, and you hear teachers say, I see no anxiety in this child, and I don't see it in the classroom. My answer is, you didn't see the diabetic either. Who's sitting there with the sugar at 350. It's a chronic medical condition. They can die quietly from tornado and ruin inside them, looking like everything's fine, busy people pleasing, and who can self-advocate. They'd rather go to the dentist and have their gums scraped. So, getting everyone to understand what it looks like, ask people harder questions, build the relationships, and be able to have, even, for example, if a teacher identified a handful of students, the guidance counselor did, that were struggling, let's get them together in a group, and have someone like myself come in, have one of the psychologists, social workers, PhDs come in and talk with these students. If you do it and you do it repeatedly, and they see something on your face, if they start to build a comfort level and might actually reach out. One of the things that once we get that higher risk identified group, people with more training and specialty in that area can more effectively help that group of students. But I think that all of us in the different organizations potentially have the ability to come together, maybe form another committee, to be able to get in. There's so many schools in the area that are so needed. But I know that I worked for in Aurora with a nonprofit organization as mental health providers. We had a little modular home outside the school, and there was a medical side, but everyone was coming down, getting calls from the nurse, the principal, guidance counselors to come, and I was doing psych left and right for these children, and having the continuity of care where a lot of students, once you start, might not follow up or follow through. If you're there, you can effectively get to them, or be a telemedicine program where they can get to us in real time as it's happening. Because the goal is to keep the kids, to get them to go to school and keep them in school. And once they're there, they can have that FaceTime. Once they've established a relationship in real, at the school, and they can then access them via telemedicine. This relationship's been established, and we can keep them in school and talk to them. They need real time as it's happening support. It's not good enough to say, put you up with someone. If you're child can't take it home, to have it happen with their families.
Now, kind of like to get your insight on or experience. You talk a lot about social media. Kids live, the youth of today live on social media. So there's a lot of positive things to social media, but there's also a lot of negative to social media. And what we've seen in working with kids, and then when we have their phones, and we're working on a tragedy over here, and we're looking at their phones, the phone tells us the story of what's going on and how the kids are being attacked on social media. And then once somebody gets on board, then everybody starts piling on. If an adult had to go through this, I guarantee they couldn't handle it, but it seems like it's an everyday occurrence. Are the kids talking about this, the social media negativity that's on there, and what resources do they have if all of a sudden they're finding themselves a victim of that type of attack or that type of pressure? Because we can talk about a lot of good things, but it can also be reversed on the negative side of what's coming at them that parents don't know about, teachers don't know about, adults don't know about it, because we don't live on these things like the kids do today.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that there are many more ways to express yourself than hiding behind a screen. And and though it is fun and interesting to be in touch with people, there's also good old-fashioned picking up a phone. And there are so many ways that social media can go south, from cyberbullying to body positivity, and so many of those photos are engineered, doctored, you name it. And I know that when there was a cyberbullying instance at my school 1 year back, they handled it very quickly by getting parents involved. And I don't know how that affected it later, but it felt very good to know that parents and teachers were there to help us. And there are always settings in place on phones that can make sure that kids don't connect with strangers or people who are going to bring them down. And just controlling that and setting limits that make sense for kids can really make a difference.
Yeah, and a lot of it also comes down to who these kids are, like their role models. Because a lot of our role models on social media, right, they tend to act as though they're perfect, and in a lot of all instances, they're absolutely not. So I think an important thing is with like our role models on the internet, and is also their transparency about how they have dealt with the internet, about how the internet has reacted to them, where they'll often be incredibly negative or they'll provide a lot of hate towards them. And having transparency among people who a lot of young kids or teenagers look up to helps them figure out ways to deal with what they're going through, going to their parents to talk about, like, this isn't something that's normal. Because if you see it happening to your role models and it's treated as though it's normal, then you think it is normal for you too. And it's absolutely not to be dealing with hate and to be being bullied on the internet or anywhere in general. Yeah, and also, like she said, having those parental settings, because kids should not be allowed to roam free on the internet. It can lead to terrible outcomes. So having settings in place on your kids' phones, on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Discord, on whatever, to try and keep them away from straying off the side of the internet where they can benefit and they can learn from, is really important for parents and teachers and all people to do.
Let me ask you real quick. If you can be an influencer
to parents around the world, what age would you tell them is appropriate for their children to have a phone?
And actually, to add to this, I'm curious what age you both got phones.
I was pretty young when I first got my phone. I think I was maybe 4th grade, so maybe I was 8 or 9, which is pretty young to be roaming around free on the internet. So I don't think that kids that young should be getting a phone or be getting like access to all Instagram or all these like different social medias. I think they should be getting it at a younger age with proper training and from their parents as well. Like their parents should be talking to them about it, about what they're looking through and putting settings so that they're not going everywhere on the internet. So to be honest, I have no idea what age. Maybe for my child, I would go with maybe around the age of 13, 14, which is really hard for kids these days because a lot of kids are getting them younger and younger. I think my cousin, who I love dearly, got his phone around the age of 10, and that was showing a lot of restraint from his parents because a lot of his classmates already had theirs. By 3rd grade, they had theirs, and that's way too early.
Well, I think that it largely depends on the family and their circumstances. I know some of my friends who have gotten their phones in case they ever got lost from their parents. And I got my phone when I was 11, just so I could talk to my faraway family and text them if I needed help. But as the pandemic started, my social life was online and I was able to call a lot more people, but that too much too quickly is never a good idea. And for instance, my cousin, who I'm very close with, got a Facebook account when she was 10, and to be honest, that hasn't worked out so well for her. And I want to help kids prevent that as much as possible. So parents taking a class, they offer classes like that at the Apple Store to learn how to work their phone for their kids' privacy and safety is going to make a big difference. And if something seems wrong to a parent, like maybe your kid should not be on, I don't know, Snapchat or TikTok a lot, then definitely do some of those measures that are recommended by that Apple class.
Great, thank you both. And can we do one more round of applause for our 2 young people?
Thank you.
And I know they had a chance to thank all of you earlier, and they're way better at thanking all of you than I am. But again, thank you so much. Again, this isn't my realm, and so being here today and just listening and hearing from all of your expertise and hearing that you're really genuinely taking to heart what folks are saying, it means a lot to me, and I've learned a lot today. So thank you very much.